Hi, this is Jim from Safety Wars. Before we start the program, I want to make sure everyone understands that we often talk about OSHA and EPA citations, along with some other regulatory actions from other agencies, legal cases, and criminal activity. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Proposed fines are exactly that, and they are often litigated, reduced, or vacated. We use available public records, news accounts, and press releases. We cannot warranty or guarantee the details of any of the stories we share, since we are not directly involved with these stories, at least not most of the time. Enjoy the show.
This show is brought to you by Safety FM.
Hello. Yeah, we're still working on that intro a little bit. So, where have I been? I've been a lot of stuff going on. It's spring, or early summer, or what do they call it? Meteorological summer. Let me get this camera in place. Never seems to be placed right. I don't know. Anyway, here we are. It is Safety Wars. For Tuesday, June 9th, 2026, we're going to be catching up on our programs, I promise you. Here. Anyway, a lot going on since we've been on the air last. Let me make some clarifications here, right? Because we got some comments and questions. So we had last time, yes, I am wearing my 250th anniversary of the United States hat, and that's what I plan on wearing for the future here, on and off. We are patriotic here, to say the least. So last time we did the safety, the tarot card reading, right, where what the idea, and I got comments, I got two really positive, and the other one, another one, well, hey, you need some more explanation. And the question was, and the thing was this: models on how to predict accidents specific in your work area. And what my point is this, right? One of the comments was, well, the industry uses models all the time, the insurance industry. Yes, that's correct. Absolutely. On the macro level, you're judging a whole industry. You know what the likely hazards are going to be, what the likely fatalities are. So, for example, in construction, you know it's going to be fall protection. In general industries, you know it's going to be car accidents. Car accidents, something like 800 or 900 per year, from what I recall. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I recall. We get that. Now, certain industries are more hazardous than the others, and you have enough thousands of workplaces, you're going to be able to develop statistics and everything else. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking on the micro level, where you have people out there saying, we want all near misses and all good catches and all your safety observations logged in, and therefore we're going to be able to predict X, Y, and Z. All right, now, let's put this in our head here. You're out doing a safety audit, and you find something, and you mark it down, whether it's electronically, right, now on your smartphone app, or on a piece of paper, and then you file it away, and you don't say anything. Right? Then you can say, well, okay, that's, you can develop a model from that, or you come up with but that's not what we do. At least that's not what you're supposed to do. And I had a conversation today with somebody on this. You do a safety audit, learning team, whatever you want to call them, doesn't matter. You do this stuff. You see what the hell is going on, and what do? You correct it. Especially if it's an IDLH situation out there, you're going to correct it. So therefore, your data is skewed to begin with. if you keep on having to correct things, like back in the day, well, we're safe. We're a safe company. We have a safety professional. And you have to remind the same 5 people put on their freaking safety glasses all the time. Guess what? Or only when you're around, managed by walking around. You're managed by, okay, hey, the safety guy is here. We got to put on our safety glasses. You're going to correct it. If you have to keep on correcting things again and again and again and again, that's problematic. That's a corporate culture thing. That's your supervisors and your managers not doing their job. Because this is what I always say, and it's always in writing. You better have it in writing. And I stress this again and again and again and again. Do you have the authority to hire? Do you have the authority to fire? Do you have the authority to discipline? Do you have the authority to make changes? Do you have the authority to write contracts? Do you have any of these authorities? And 9 times out of 10, the safety professional does not have any of that authority. Only with one instance that I had, well, actually 2 instances, same organization or group of companies where I have the authority to throw people off the job for not doing safe or whatever, because they needed to have that in the field. I needed to have that because it was along the lines of, Jimmy, blah, 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 blah. You're telling us that we got to wear hard hats? There's the New Jersey salute for you. Right? We're not doing it, and screw you. Or we also call it New Jersey state bird. Anyway, and then what happens? Nothing ever changes. So what's our job as safety professionals is to initiate change, to impact the culture, right? And to correct things. So right off the bat, those models are out the window because you're correcting things and you're impacting things. With the one caveat that your workforce isn't disciplined and your managers don't want to actually enforce rules, basic rules. Your managers don't want to set up a system, more importantly, a system that's in place to mitigate hazards, to set up guards, like a set of controls, to create resilience, right? Which is the better way. Now, you may say, well, Jim, it's bad apple theory. You're promoting bad apple. I'm not promoting the bad apple theory. The workforce will do what it is told to do and what the incentive is to do. If their incentive is not by the person who pays the bills, who signs their paycheck, who manages them, and everything else, if their incentive is ignore the safety person, ignore all these safety things that we submitted, if that's what their incentive, that's what their instruction is, that's what they're going to do. So what's my point here? Again, I'm rambling. Okay, well, my point is this. You're a safety professional, you got to do your job. These models that we have out there, not reliable on the micro level in a specific situation. Because they're concentrating on eye protection here. Guess what? Overhead hazards maybe here. HAZCOM hazards. Industrial hygiene hazards. Disposal hazards. All these other things are out there that might be happening. So you're better off. Well, my point was, you're probably going to have a better way of predicting what the accident's going to be with a set of tarot cards. With that. Right? And the positive comments that I got were from a couple of individuals have no affiliation with each other, don't know each other. Both of them, one is a professional tarot card reader. The other one's wife is a professional tarot card reader. And they both said, fantastic job on that. So, it is what it is. Now, let me talk about welding, burning, and safety stuff that doesn't get enforced. we're often the victim, right? I don't like victimhood mentality, but we're often the victim of other people's safety practices and programs. So we're out there doing our thing, right? We're working for a company, and then they subcontract someone. They're forced to subcontract the work. They bring in an outside company as a subcontractor, and they're like, well, wait, we're doing this? Why are we doing this? We worked on the other job, and they didn't enforce these rules. And these are basic rules. I was on a project up in Phillipsburg, New Jersey, where we had the contractor threaten the roofing contractor, very well-known one, threatened to throw everybody off the roof. Not ask them to leave and throw them off, like throw them off, like over the side. Because they were forced, in quotes, air quotes, if you're listening, they were forced to wear fall protection. We go into a meeting, and the main client, the GC, doesn't want to get rid of them. We need to have them. Our bid is on them, and they're the cheapest. They're the quickest. Maybe not the cheapest, they're the quickest. We get everything done quick with them. And their argument is nobody else enforces these rules. And I said to him, I absolutely 100% believe you. 100% no one else enforces the rules when you're on the job. Why would they enforce the rules when you're threatening to throw people off the roof? If you're threatening people's lives, you think that a safety person that they get out of that was doing flipping burgers last week, a lot of these contractors, they get the person to be now a corporate safety director and paying them $15 an hour. You think he's going to risk his life? Or her life, for that matter, their life and limb, to enforce a safety rule when you're threatening to throw people off the roof for enforcing safety rules? Do you really think that's going to happen? Oh. Well, I've never had a safety person talk to me that way. Yeah, you probably haven't. Maybe you should have. Oh, by the way, weren't you just under federal investigation for tax fraud and for OSHA violations of fall protection? And then the GC says, hey, what do you mean, Jim? Oh, here it is. I have it all. Here it is. Oh, well, we're going to have to talk about this. Like, talk about, Jim, you shouldn't have said that. I said, no, I should have said that. And my question is, why isn't your corporate person saying that to you? Why are you letting this kind of contractor onto the job? Well, because they're the cheapest. And they're maybe not the cheapest, but they get the job done real quick. And what? You're okay with the insurance? Oh, well, Jim, I don't care if it's... No, and I'll quote that old song. Raining men? I don't care. Let them die. Doesn't come out of my pocket. It comes out of the company's pocket. This is the kind of stuff that we have to deal with. And this is what the reality is. So I don't know what to tell you. So we're going to move on through to our first commercial break here. And we'll be right back.
Safety Wars is streaming now. SafetyFM.com.
At Safety FM, we're just a humble radio station and podcast network. But we're changing the way people look at safety, one broadcast and one podcast at a time. Because here, we don't treat the word safety as a dirty word. We make it powerful. Rated R Safety Show. Jay Allen pushes boundaries and breaks myths. Safety Wars. Jim Poesl brings the battle for safety to life. Pre-accident investigations. Todd Conklin dives deep into human performance. The Safety Consultant Podcast, Sheldon Primus helps you build your business and your career. A Hope Podcast with no name. Andy Barker and Matt Florio keep it real with human and organizational performance. The Accidental Safety Pro, Jill James explores what it means to grow in this profession. The Safety of Work, Dr. Drew Ray and Dr. David Proven bring you science, research, and real-world impact. Hop into action. Ben Hutchinson gets you moving from theory to practice. Truck Safe Live. Brandon Wiseman delivers compliance and safety for America's road warriors. The Safety Pro Podcast. Blaine J. Hoffman blends leadership and innovation for today's workforce. Whether you're on the job, on the road, or on a mission to make work safer, there's a voice for you at Safety FM. Safety FM, changing the way people look at safety, one broadcast at a time. Visit safetyfm.com or download the Safety FM app wherever you get your podcasts.
Among the most mysterious discoveries of the ancient safety tribes were large banners suspended above work sites. These banners often displayed a sacred number. Scholars believe these signs served both ceremonial and spiritual purposes. The ancient people appeared convinced that displaying the number publicly would ward off injuries, accidents, and regulatory inspections. Evidence suggests entire organizations became devoted to protecting the sacred number. When incidents occurred, rituals often followed, meetings were conducted, root causes were reassigned, terminology was adjusted, and in some cases, injuries vanished entirely from official records. Researchers now believe the zero incident banner did not actually prevent injuries. Instead, it may have prevented reporting. Archaeologists discovered that many safety leaders of the period measured success not by risk reduction, but by numerical purity. The lower the number, the greater the praise from upper management. Some organizations reportedly achieved zero by discouraging workers from reporting injuries at all. Others transformed recordability itself into a sacred legal debate.
Don't go to the clinic. You'll ruin the numbers.
The ancient tribes appeared obsessed with maintaining appearances. Entire ceremonies were dedicated to celebrating injury-free milestones. Workers received pizza, executives received bonuses. Meanwhile, near misses, fatigue, understaffing, deferred maintenance, and production pressure quietly accumulated beneath the surface. Some historians now compare these banners to protective talismans, symbols intended to reassure leadership that danger had been defeated. But archaeological evidence suggests the hazards remained fully operational. The workers still fell, the machines still failed, the systems still drifted. Only the reporting changed.
From feature story news in Washington,
Modern scholars remain divided. Were the ancient safety professionals genuinely attempting to improve safety? Or had parts of the profession become trapped in what historians now call safety theater?
That was Ancient Safety Wars, available on YouTube as Ancient Safety Professionals. So what is that? It's our web series here where we, it's our web series, right, currently there, that essentially it's about, now I always want to write a sci-fi series, and it takes place in the year 3000. United States is gone, and it's archaeologists that are going back and they're digging up all different types of industrial sites and things, and they're finding this ancient race, this ancient tribe that they never really quite understood, called safety professionals. And they tried to make sense out of what they're seeing, and it is satire, right, and humor. I hope my form of humor, satire. Again, what is it about? You cannot sometimes we could sit here with studies, common sense, logic, experts, you name it. But what are they, and the they being the people making the decisions, C-suites and everything else, what are they going to go by? They're going to go by what they first learned about safety. So you're dealing with, right now, anywhere a C-level person or mid-level manager, anyone, let's say from the ages of 45 to on up. totally different world that they grew up in a lot of ways, especially safety. However, they're not going to give up the old ways so easy. Only possible way they're going to give up the old ways or even actually consider the new ways is if it's going to improve their bottom line. It's going to save them money. It's going to make their cause productivity to go up. And that's our job as human organizational performance folks to try to convey. It's a lot easier to work with people when you're not arguing with them, or you're not antagonistic. As they said at one project I was on, where the safety, and it was one of the safety professionals, again, for the subcontractors who had the idea, well, they're the enemy. They're the enemy. Right? All these oversight, they're the enemy. I pointed out, and I said, you guys all have had outreach training, haven't you? Oh, yeah, Jim, we all had outreach training. So, well, where did you go? Oh, for it. And then it's obvious that they bought the cards on the street. Can't prove it, but it's obvious that they have. Or they went to one of those godforsaken online platforms with it. And I said, do you remember the first hour where they say you have a right to a safe and healthful workplace free of recognized hazards? They said, huh? I said, well, how's your employer doing? How's your employer doing on eliminating the hazards in your workplace? Well, they're not doing anything. Well, I said, that's like a violation of your civil rights to begin with. Now, is it in the Declaration of Independence or in the Constitution rights? No, it is not specifically, but you do have the 9th and the 10th Amendment, where there are other rights that are not enumerated, but these are the enumerated ones, 1 through 8. Right to free speech, keep and bear arms, not to have your house used by the military, illegal search and seizure, nothing against self-incrimination. Number 6 is right to an attorney, and I forget 7 and 8 offhand, but that's the Bill of Rights. So you have a right to go to work and then come home safe. Now, how they chose to enforce these rules was through the regulatory system and through the Occupational Safety and Health Act. You can go look this up. But it's along the lines of, if they are going to go and they're willing to violate your civil rights, they're not supplying you basic PPE, basic training, basic hazard assessments, and all this other stuff, chances are they're also breaking a lot of other laws out there, employment laws, industry best practices, and what have you. That's my experience with this. Now, I'm not talking about inadvertent violations. You can't really comply with everything. I think that's humanly impossible. You can intend to comply with everything. I don't think it's possible to comply with everything to the letter. That being said, right, you can prioritize what's going to kill you, what's going to hurt you, and then de minimis type stuff. That's important, but, really is not an immediate hazard. Sticky is the acronym, stuff that gets you killed, right? With that. But, and then when you start to point that out and say, this is your right, that's why you had that out. Oh, they didn't send you to class? Well, that's telling you something else if they bought it on the street. If they gave you, they had, instead of a 30-hour class, it was an 8-hour class, one day. Anything like that. It's with everything. They're not enforcing the rules. They're not managing you with basic PPE, basic procedures. Manage. I didn't say enforce. I said manage. All of this stuff goes into it. So we're often at a victim of everything else that's out there. Now, let's mosey on over. We're going to go on over, and we did not have Department of Labor news. And again, with the current administration, they ain't releasing a lot of stuff out there. So here we have Piggly Wiggly. Okay. Here we have. U.S. Department of Labor cites Piggly Wiggly franchise for willful serious safety violations after employee suffers an amputation. This is from the Department of Labor. The U.S. Department of Labor cited Bowdoin, looks like a suburb of Atlanta, Piggly Wiggly supermarket franchisee for safety violations after meat department workers suffered an amputation. The department's OSHA found that on January 29, 2026. Again, this was issued on last week. So that's like 6 months and 3 weeks later. Almost 5 months and 3 weeks. 5 months and a little bit more after their visit, they issued this, right? They have up until 6 months. Department's OSHA found that on January 29th, RVG Foods Incorporated operating as Piggly Wiggly tasked the worker with cleaning a commercial grinder. The coworker stepped on the machine's foot control pedal. Started the grinder, pulling the employee's hand and causing amputation of 4 fingers. Okay, so what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to de-energize that before that happens. Make it so that doesn't happen through the lockout, tagout system, general industry. OSHA cited the employer with a willful violation for bypassing machine safeguards and exposing workers to hazards like moving parts and flying debris. The employer was also issued a serious violation for failure to establish a program to control hazardous energy. That's 1910-147, and other than serious violation for failure to report the amputation to OSHA within 24 hours of the incident. OSHA assessed $196,000 in proposed penalties. So here's my. Let me point out something here, and I believe another organization who had numerous problems with OSHA might have fallen into They might have fallen into the same thing because I spoke to and I did my own little investigation of that store there, and where the managers and workers had never heard of OSHA, never heard of any of this. I said, didn't you know that your company was fined like $10 million in the last 3 years for health and safety violations? Did they ever communicate that to you or tell you anything about it? No, the first time we heard about it, sir. Okay. So this might be a whole thing where they were treating this, might have been, I don't know, I'm not involved with it, might have been a situation where we had the managers not knowing that they were supposed to report this to OSHA, an amputation. That might have been a situation here with that. And again, if you're a company and your managers are not getting the training, that's an issue. If this were in certain other states, this might even be criminal negligence, and someone might be going to jail over this, right? I'm not an attorney. I'm not giving legal advice. Here's our next one here. U.S. Department of Labor announces a $10.5 million funding availability to support MSHA for the nation's miners. The U.S. Department of Labor today announced its MSHA is making $10.5 million in grant funding available to help states provide mine safety training for the nation's miners. Through our ongoing commitment to safety training, we achieved historically low all-injury rate for mining last year. This latest investment demonstrates that we are doubling down on our efforts to protect our nation's hardworking miners, said Acting Secretary of Labor Keith Sonderling. The Department of Labor will continue to put American miners first by keeping them safe on the job, which will help advance, and here it goes, President Trump's mission to bolster domestic mineral production. MSHA will award these grants as part of its fiscal year 2026 state grants program to fund the delivery of federally mandated training and retraining for miners who work at surface, underground coal, and metal and non-metal mines throughout the U.S., state, tribal, right, going on. And it goes on and on and on. So basically, that's a whole compliance assistance thing. And we're at the bottom of the hour, we're going to put on the news. We're going to do the 3-minute one today.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Donald Trump says he may have an idea about a possible Iran deal in the next day or two. According to CNN, the president has suggested a deal is close 37 times since the start of the conflict. It's unclear if negotiators are any closer to narrowing the gaps over difficult issues, including reopening the Strait of Hormuz and Iran handing over its enriched uranium.
We have ongoing negotiations in Iran and with Iran. That hasn't stopped, and we could have at least an idea by 1 or 2 days from now, but I think it's going well. The blockade continues to hold 100%. Nothing is getting through our blockade. No oil, no income, no nothing. Nothing's getting through the blockade.
At least 37 people are now confirmed to have died and more than 470 injured after an earthquake hit the Philippines. That's according to the local disaster agency. Rescue operations are still underway, and the death toll is expected to rise. The company behind the popular AI tool ChatGPT, OpenAI, is set to become a publicly traded company a short time after its biggest rival, Anthropic, revealed it was doing the same. Everson's Mitch McCann reports from New York.
In a post online, OpenAI said it recently submitted what is known as a confidential S1, the formal filing required for an IPO, or initial public offering. The company went on to say, "We have not decided on timing yet. It may be a while because there are things we want to do that are likely easier as a private company." OpenAI is behind ChatGPT, the revolutionary AI chatbot now used by millions of people. In March, the company was valued at $852 billion after reportedly raising $122 billion in funding to grow its business. Earlier this month, Anthropic, the company behind the ChatGPT rival, Claude, also announced it was going public. In its most recent funding round, the company was valued at $952 billion. Mitch McCann, New York.
Hundreds of Iraqi Kurdish migrants trying to reach the UK were tortured and threatened with organ removal last year, according to British media. Hostages who escaped told the BBC that they were captured by a Libyan militia which blackmailed their families into paying $5,000 under threat of having a kidney removed. Everson Stuart Smith sends this report from London.
The BBC investigation found that during the summer of 2025, migrants travelling from Iraqi Kurdistan to the UK via Libya in northern Africa were intercepted by a militia. It was making money by kidnapping and imprisoning migrants and blackmailing them in a largely lawless country. Conditions were so cramped, according to survivors, they were forced to sleep standing up, and some report being tortured.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
And thank you very much for that report there. That's pretty fouled up. We hear these stories over the years on organ donations in other countries, and where people are, and in this country too. So you wake up in the old story about you wake up in the 1 o'clock in the morning in a bathtub filled with water and ice, right? Or in a hotel room. Oh, your kidneys have been removed. We've heard of that. I don't know if that's ever happened. That was back in the day. So here we have something on a legitimate news source, not Safety Wars. You heard it here, but with this, where you have organ theft with that. There's some controversial stuff with that going on. Now, we read HHS press releases. Why do we go through this with this stuff? The reason being is we want to show you exactly what's being said out there and without a filter. Do we comment on this stuff? Yeah, and plus they're all open source. They're government documents. And this is from yesterday, right? And joint statement on the preeminence of the U.S. government regulating health risks for Americans. The U.S. remains committed to protecting the public health of Americans through sound science, transparency, and rigorous independent review. International organizations can play a constructive role in advancing scientific discussion, their conclusion should not automatically be treated as definitive in the United States. This is the whole thing that goes back to COVID and the WHO being allegedly, the WHO, right, World Health Organization, being accused of being an agent for not so nice people. And we'll leave it at that. In recent years, scientists, policymakers, and stakeholders have raised questions regarding the consistency, transparency, and the real-world capability of certain international cancer hazard assessments by the International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC. Too often, broad classifications based on limited or theoretical risks can create unnecessary public confusion, undermine confidence in everyday products and industries, lead to policy outcomes that are disconnected from actual exposure and modern scientific standards. IARC's findings and the monographs often blur the line between hazard and true risk, while diminishing independently verified findings of other research institutions. Furthermore, IRC's research provides diminishing returns on scientific enterprise while advancing politicized narratives that are often cited for U.S. domestic legal contexts. For example, equating red meat to tobacco products oversimplifies complex scientific discourse and does little to inform sound public health policy that could be of benefit to the American people. An America First approach to public health means ensuring that decisions affecting U.S. workers, families, farmers, and businesses are guided by transparent, evidence-based processes that reflect America's interests and scientific standards, not by organizations whose findings might not fully align with U.S. law, policy, or scientific review practices. The U.S. will continue to support credible science while prioritizing policies that are practical, balanced, and rooted in accountability to the American people. The Trump administration is committed to improving the health and safety of the American people, including rigorous, independent scientific expertise. American regulatory decisions should be made by American institutions accountable to the American people. U.S. agencies possess some of the world's strongest scientific expertise and are best to evaluate health and safety risks during comprehensive evidence, practical exposure data, and balanced risk assessment measures. I mean, this is a policy statement here with this. I mean, no. So as Americans, we're always taught American exceptionalism, meaning we're the best in the world for everything. That there's some debate to that. With that, there's some debate. There's a lot of disagreement, and so a lot of this stuff has become politicized. I'll point out to the global warming, aka climate change, aka the greenhouse effect, right? Debate as of the last 20 years, right? Where, my opinion, always my opinion, it's global warming happening. You have mechanism. Not exactly sure the total mechanism. However, it is happening. Climate change does happen. And my opinion is we're spending all the money on the wrong stuff to help combat it. We should be mitigating risks to our coastlines and other things and preparing them, including, we could do a whole thing. I was going to come on last week, but we got held up doing other things on water. And you talk about a crisis. We have a freaking international crisis on water, fresh water here. And it's, with that. Okay. What else we have? All right, so this is near and dear to my heart. This is from last week. This is from Concord, New Hampshire. Yes, it's Concord, not Concord. Concord, New Hampshire. On May 29th, the U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced a series of major initiatives to strengthen the nation's response to Lyme disease and other tick-borne illnesses. HHS actions include a multi-million-dollar pilot program focused on tick control and up to $2.5 million in innovation challenges, funding for the NIH researchers to combat alpha-gal syndrome and a public-private collaboration to help patients connect with experienced providers. Secretary Kennedy delivered these announcements during a press conference in New Hampshire, one of the states hardest hit by Lyme disease, after convening a roundtable with state lawmakers and Lyme disease advocates as part of his Take Back Your Health tour. So here are some of the organizations here. Maha Action. What people are saying, right? Project Lyme via X. Big news from Lyme community. HHS has announced a series of major new initiatives. And everybody's saying everything is wonderful, everything is good. Well, we'll see. Because this is what basically... no, I know I have, and let me take this off. I know I've had it several times. One of my close family members has had this. Right? It's been quoted as a science fiction nightmare by Secretary Kennedy. I tell you what, there were... Look it up. Here. With everything on there. With what it does. So basically, this is what it comes down to. You're in... the first time I had it was, I believe, 1991, when it was a relatively new illness. Some doctors used to call it Borrelia with that, after the genus of the disease. And nobody knew what to make out of it. And I ended up with it, and what was it? Tetracycline is what they gave me. And then later on, I had it again, and again, tetracycline, and then third time, they used ciprofloxacin to impact that. And what happened was I found a tick on me, then I ended up with a classic, what they call a bullseye rash around the tick bite with that. Twice I ended up with bullseye rash around the tick bite. One time I did not have that. No, people get diagnosed with many other different types of diseases, and it turns out to be Lyme disease. I know one family whose daughter basically was 14 or 15, and she got a tick bite, didn't know it, had known the classic visible symptoms of Lyme disease, and they were treating her for all different types of weird things for years. And it turned out somebody said, oh, let's do a $75 Lyme disease exam, a blood test. And, oh, yeah, she has Lyme disease. And that was after horrific neurological issues here for her. So it's not something to be really messed with that. Believe me, I don't play games when it comes to tick bites here. What else do we have here? HHS announced a federal elder justice action plan and the EJCC's Never Ever campaign to protect older Americans. Today, and this was on June 9th today, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, through the Elder Justice Coordinating Council, that's EJCC, announced the federal elder justice plan, a government-wide strategy to protect older Americans' rights, strengthen accountability, and make help easier to find. The announcement also launches the Never Ever, a national campaign that advances the action plan's prevention goals by helping people recognize and avoid government and business imposter scams. Chaired by the HHS Secretary, the EJCC brings together 17, and I'm not going to list them, federal departments and agencies to strengthen collaboration and everything else. I tell you what, when my parents were alive, people tried to scam them all the time. They got multiple phone calls that said, your grandson, blah, 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 and they had his name. He's in jail and he needs to be bailed out. And he's on $1 million bail. Send us your money. No, that was going on. They called me up all shaken up. I said, Dad, this is a scam. Why don't you give him a call, your grandson a call, and find out? So he called him up and said, no, Grandpa, I'm here at work doing my thing. Okay. The Never Ever campaign reinforces that warning with practical examples. Real government agencies will not tell people to move money to protect and demand unusual forms of payment or ask for a social security number to determine eligibility for a government grant. With that, and let me tell you that social securities often are public after the person dies. So if you're an executor of a will or anything, that's important to know. Now, Secretary, this is from the Office of the Vice President here. This was posted on X here. And remember, the Vice President is also the President of the Senate. And this is on Minnesota fraud cases. And this is directed a letter from Vice President Vance to the Honorable Colin McDonald, Assistant Attorney General, National Fraud Enforcement Division. Yesterday, dear Assistant Attorney General McDonald, yesterday you and I received a letter and report from Congressman James Comer, Chairman of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. The 205-page report would contain shocking allegations about the failure of senior officials in Minnesota government to address widespread fraud on federally funded social services programs. It goes on with that. Let's see if I can get page 2 here. Hold on. Right. And it says, we cannot, if state officials in Minnesota or elsewhere in the country facilitated fraud or looked the other way while this theft was happening, and if they actively prevented state and local federal officials from stopping fraud and bringing fraudsters to justice, or if they intimidated or harassed whistleblowers who encourage, and by the way, whistleblowers are managed by OSHA, who courageously tried to shine a light on this problem, they must be held accountable. It is imperative that the National Fraud Enforcement Division, in partnership with the appropriate investigative agencies and U.S. attorneys' offices, open investigations and uncover the truth and bring any and all wrongdoers to justice. I'm confident that, under your leadership, the Justice Department will respond to this referral and Chairman Comey's report. Now, I've had a chance to review some of these reports here. With this, no, we'll go over that at another time. Old reports, but there's still there on blackouts. Here we go. And this was released yesterday. Here, 205-page report. We're not going to read all 205 pages. Let me just download a copy of this. All right, and Feeding Our Future was a Minnesota-based nonprofit created to provide meals to needy school children during the COVID-19 pandemic that vastly overstated the number of meals it provided. Feeding Our Future dissolved in early 2022 after federal investigators executed search warrants on dozens of its sponsored sites and also froze its assets. In September 2022, federal prosecutors announced charges against 47 defendants. Remember, that was the Biden administration there, not the Trump administration. Most of whom are from Minnesota's Somali community. In a fraud scheme, I'm just reading the report here, folks. In a fraud scheme alleged to have stolen nearly $300 million in funds from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's federal child nutrition programs. All right, and it goes on. During the meals funded by the organization are to be served at sites sponsored by an authorized organization, and sponsors are responsible for monitoring sites and preparing reimbursement claims for the services provided. Sponsors are also responsible for monitoring all facilities they sponsor, as well as training key staff. Right, and during the COVID-19 pandemic, the USDA relaxed edibility requires. I think they were supposed to say eligibility, but edibility, yeah, hopefully it's edible. Through waivers, which temporarily modified eligibility, requirements for sponsors by the FCNP by allowing for profit restaurants to participate in the program and off-site food distribution to children outside of the education programs and meal bundling to be picked up by parents and guardians. Yes, we had a similar situation in New York with that there. These waivers directed state agencies to have a plan to maintain program accountability and integrity. So it goes down here. What are the allegations? Goes on with all the high risk things, and what are the allegations? They're saying widespread fraud, right? They call out some specific people here. I'm not going to go over their names, right? We're innocent until proven guilty here in a court of law and on safety wars. So finding number 1, Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison knew about widespread fraud and failed to act, right? That's finding number 1. And it goes on and on and on with that, with some documentation. Okay. Right, let's go on. And they have all of the things here. And the way that they found it. Okay. DOJ outreach and the scale of fraud awareness. The Walz administration knew that fraud in DHS programs was out of control and asked DOJ for help in August 2025 to cover their tracks. DHS confirmed that they had to terminate Medicaid programs because of pervasive fraud. They ignored massive fraud funding spikes. In 2019 and 2025, there were massive, well-documented increases in funding reimbursements for DHS high-risk Medicaid programs that were ignored. The Walz administration knew that the fraud in DHS programs were occurring since 2019, but tried to seriously downplay the extent of their knowledge during transcribed interviews. And let's go to it goes on and on and on. Okay, let's go to finding number 2. Is there a finding number 2? DHS lacked oversight mechanisms, sufficient internal controls, and failed to take responsibility for stopping fraud. Mention of kickbacks here. And let's see. Finding number 3. All right, I missed finding number 2, but political and external pressures distorted decision-making. The social services provider community in Minnesota is a very strong lobby that wields considerable political power to direct how the governor's office and agencies make decisions. The Walz administration was more concerned about getting ahead of media reports about fraud than rooting out actual fraud to protect taxpayer dollars. Racism accusations. DHS was accused of racism from social services provider community when they tried to address fraud early in Governor Walz's tenure. It's all in the report here, folks. Who's going to go through the report other than safety wars? Right? So you're not being bamboozled here. Finding number 4. Minnesota agents abdicated responsibility and lacked accountability. Right, as MDAE Commissioner Mary Catherine Ricker claimed to know very little about Feeding Our Future and federal child malnutrition programs that MDE administered. Commissioner Ricker was either untruthful in her testimony or severely incompetent in her role. High-level Walz-appointed DHS officials consistently passed the buck and abdicated responsibility for investigating fraud or having any knowledge about fraud in DHS federally funded programs, pointing to the Office of Inspector General or the Division of Internal Audit as responsibility entities. Again, extensive documentation here. And these are all just allegations. And they give the appendix. So let's go back. They have a summary page here. So there are here. I'm sorry if you're following along on video. Finding 1, Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison knew about widespread fraud and failed to act. Finding number 2, systemic oversight failures enabled widespread fraud. Finding number 3, political and external pressures distorted decision-making. Finding number 4, Minnesota agencies abdicated responsibility and lacked accountability. Finding number 5, retaliation and suppression of whistleblowers undermined fraud reporting. So we're going to go over to page 129 here. And what are the conclusions? Seems like a 129. 129, where are you? I know, we're going to have to revisit this. I mean, you can make a conclusion. Okay, real short conclusion here. Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison knew about the fraud in federal programs administered by the state of Minnesota much earlier than admitted. Transcribed interviews with current and former public officials have confirmed that Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison were aware of fraud, and it lists what that fraud is. Missing $300 million. The committee has found Minnesota lacking adequate oversight controls. Now, here's my question here. Right, so this is a real question. Okay, there was fraud and all this stuff. We'll assume that that's correct. It's up to the citizens of Minnesota through the democratic process to hold people responsible. They're saying that, well, we're going to do this, we're going to refer this, we're going to indict things. Okay, great. But unless that they could show that, and there's a crime, there's fraud, financial fraud, unless they could directly tie that to them, my understanding of the law, all of these people to that, and they absolutely knew, and they had the intent on doing it, I don't know if they could be prosecuted for being incompetent. I would not hold my breath to wait for prosecutions here. I wouldn't do it. This whole thing could be just, no, and I'm not being negative here. This is a election year fraud, election year thing going on here. That's my question. So, no, because we have the midterms. So for Safety Wars and Safety FM, this is Jim Poesl. God willing, I'll be here tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.